Larry King has offered his thoughts on the Second Amendment, and here's what he said.
Retired Supreme Court Justice John Paul Stevens is advocating...
I favor changing the Second Amendment.
Well, he's saying repeal the Second Amendment.
Yeah, repeal it and write it.
You think so?
It's poorly written.
Can't we just...
Second Amendment's poorly written? Sure.
So you'd like to just rewrite it?
What they mean by militia.
Right.
You know who started the Second Amendment? Was Southern senators, so they could ward off slaves' uprisings.
Really?
Yeah.
Is that true?
Read the history.
I don't have time right now. Can you just give me a brief background?
No, it was started, eventually they won in other areas, but Southern senators started it so they could repel slave uprisings.
Oh, okay. So in that regard...
They wanted to be able to protect themselves against black people.
Yeah, correct. That Second Amendment's terrible, and the NRA is the worst.
The Second Amendment was written to stop slave uprising? Okay. Todd is in Ontario, California. The question before the court is, who replaced Vince Lombardi as coach of the Green Bay Packers? Todd is from Ontario, California. Todd, and the answer is?
Well, it's Phil Bankston.
Very well done, sir. Extremely well done.
All right.
Now, Todd, the question is, how did you know that?
Well, I grew up in Wisconsin and was a Packer fan all those losing years.
There you go. And you guys
everything about it.
You guys are known affectionately at that area because my ex-wife is from that area. She's from a town right outside Green Bay called Marinette.
Oh, yeah.
And you guys are called the Cheeseheads?
That's correct.
Rabid fan base. I mean, rabid fan base. Once you are a Green Bay Packer, you die a Green Bay Packer fan.
There's no choice in the matter.
None.
That's for sure.
Well, Todd, stay on the line. Very well done. And we'll get you a copy of Dear Father, Dear Son. Phil Bankston. He was a former American football player and coach, longtime assistant coach in football, but primarily remembered as the successor to Vince Lombardi. And he, of course, was not nearly as successful as was Vince Lombardi, which is why he's primarily remembered as a Trivial Pursuit question. 888-971-SAGE. One more time. If nobody wants to take away our guns, why are people saying, let's get rid of the guns? And why are people harping on this Australian gun buyback program as if it was successful? It was not. We'll deal with that. And some of the women who made accusations against Bill Clinton have come forward and are wondering why they're not being interviewed. Juanita Brogic says, because we're not porn stars. I'm Larry Elder. Don't leave town.
Larry Elder.
888-971-SAGE, 888-971-7243 on this Phone-a-Bro Friday. We're going to be talking about Paula Jones and Juanita Broderick's reaction to the attention Stormy Daniels is getting. Juanita Broderick believes that the reason Stormy Daniels is getting so much more attention is because she's a porn star. And we're going to be talking about the quest on the part of the former Justice of the Supreme Court, John Paul Stevens, described as a conservative by one of the hosts on CNN, Brooke Baldwin, which is interesting because when he retired a few years ago, Jeffrey Toobin, their legal analyst, referred to John Paul Stevens as, quote, an unexpected liberal, close quote. But I'm sure Baldwin would be in a better position to know. Now, I was on Hannity last night. Judge Janine sat in for him, and my brother Kirk's name came up.
Yeah,
Pardon?
Congress isn't. He was agreeing. We're all agreeing.
I'm agreeing that Nancy Pelosi is a millstone around the Democrats. Connor Lamb in Pennsylvania won because he ran away from her. And my advice to my fellow Democrats is stay as far away from the far left and Nancy Pelosi as possible.
But
Judge,
go ahead, Larry.
Judge Doug and my brother Kirk are the most reasonable Democrats I've ever run across.
Thank you, Larry.
Judge Doug and my brother Kirk are the most reasonable Democrats I've ever run across.
Thank you, Larry.
So I'll be talking to my brother about that. And I sent my brother the clip, and he put a message on my phone.
The most reasonable Democrats, I don't know about all that, but thank you for the plug there. We'll see if I can live up to all of that. Hey, have a good night.
We'll be talking to him next hour. 888-971-SAGE. So, Larry King says the Second Amendment was poorly written, designed to stop slave uprisings. That's not what the Founding Fathers said.
Retired Supreme Court Justice John Paul Stevens is advocating...
I favor changing the Second Amendment.
Well, he's saying repeal the Second Amendment.
Repeal it and write in.
You think so?
It's poorly written.
Can't we just...
Second Amendment poorly written?
Sure.
So you'd like to just rewrite it?
What they mean by militia.
Right.
You know who started the Second Amendment was Southern senators, so they could ward off slaves.
Really?
Yeah.
Is that true?
Read the history.
I don't have time right now. Can you just give me a brief background?
No, it was started, eventually they won in other areas, but Southern senators started it so they could repel slave uprisings.
Wow. Larry King, noted historian. Quote, a free people ought not only to be armed, but disciplined. George Washington, first annual address to both houses of Congress, January 8, 1790. I think Larry King was probably there. I'm sure he was not that old, but maybe a teenager. Here's another gentleman. No free man shall ever be debarred the use of arms. Thomas Jefferson, Virginia Constitution, Draft 1, 1776. The Constitution of most of our states and of the United States assert that all power is inherent in the people, that they may exercise it by themselves, that it is their right and duty to be at all times armed. End of quote. This is from a letter that Mr. Jefferson sent to James Madison, another one of the Founding Fathers. In fact, James Madison is considered to be the father of the Constitution. May I quote it? Thank you. What country can preserve its liberties if their rulers are not warned from time to time that the people preserve the spirit of resistance? Let them take arms. End of quote.
Retired Supreme Court Justice John Paul Stevens is advocating...
I favor changing the Second Amendment.
Well, he's saying repeal the Second Amendment.
Repeal it and write in.
You think so?
It's poorly written.
Can't we just...
Second Amendment poorly written?
Sure.
So you'd like to just rewrite it?
What they mean by militia.
Right.
You know who started the Second Amendment was Southern senators, so they could ward off slaves.
Really?
Yeah.
Is that true?
Read the history.
I don't have time right now. Can you just give me a brief background?
No, it was started, eventually they won in other areas, but Southern senators started it so they could repel slave uprisings.
Oh, okay. So in that regard...
They wanted to be able to protect themselves against black people.
Yeah, correct. That Second Amendment's terrible, and the NRA is the worst.
Quote, to disarm the people is the most effectual way to enslave them. End of quote. George Mason, whose hand is very heavy in the drafting of the Bill of Rights. Quote, I ask you, who are the militia? They consist now of the whole people except a few public officers. End of quote. George Mason. Before a standing army can rule, the people must be disarmed, as they are in almost every country in Europe. The supreme power in America cannot enforce unjust laws by the sword because the whole body of the people are armed and constitute a force superior to any band of regular troops. End of quote. Noah Webster. Shall I go on? I think you get the point.
Is that true?
Read the history.
Unbelievable. 888-971-SAGE, 888-971-7243. Nelson Shields, founder of Handgun Control, Inc., that's the organization that eventually became the Brady Campaign to Prevent Gun Violence, gave an interview, 1976, could not have been more clear about his goals. Quote, our ultimate goal, total control of handguns in the United States, is going to take time. My estimate is from 7 to 10 years. The first problem is to slow down the increasing number of handguns being produced and sold in this country. The second problem is to get handguns registered. And the final problem is to make the possession of all handguns and all handgun ammunition, except for the military, policemen, licensed security guards, licensed sporting clubs, and licensed gun collectors, totally illegal. Okay, that was 1976. How about 1993? LA Times editorial. Editorial, of course, is the official statement of the newspaper, as opposed to somebody submitting an op-ed piece, which is just an opinion that the newspaper does not endorse. This is the official position of the newspaper. Quote, "You will not feel safe. Your children will not be safe until there are almost no guns on the streets and in homes. No guns, period, except for those held by law enforcement officers and a few others, including qualified hunters and collectors. We must, as a nation, move toward a very different model, one that presumptively bars private citizens from owning a firearm unless they can demonstrate a special need and ability to do so. We think the time has come for Americans to tell the truth about guns. They are not for us. We cannot handle them. They kill people, our children included. It's time to get rid of them, period." End of quote. Fast forward to shortly after the Las Vegas shooting. Washington Post columnist Eugene Robinson, you see him a lot on MSNB Hee Haw. Quote, "A real gun debate has to look at the fact, 300 million guns. We need, to look at what's done in places like Australia, where they had a gun buyback. And gun control is permissible, according to the Supreme Court. So, that's what the debate ought to be." Hillary also talked about the successful gun buyback program. Australia had a huge mass killing about 25 years ago. Canada did as well. So did the UK. In reaction, they passed much stricter gun laws. The Australian government, as part of trying to clamp down on the availability of automatic weapons, offered a good price. Why are people bragging about this so-called Australian gun buyback program? We're going to talk about that when we come back. And Paula Jones and Juanita Broderick on why the attention for Stormy Daniels. Is it because we're not porn stars? And Laura Ingraham has apologized for the statement she made about Mr. David Hogg. But why is it that Al Sharpton gets a pass? I'm Larry Elder. Don't leave town.
Larry Elder.